Welcome to Connected Calendars. This is the final installment of a three-part series. In this part, we are going to look at calendars and websites. My name is Chris Barsas, and I'm the Principal Consultant at Personal Mac Geniuses, and I'll be your host for this video. Before we begin, there are a few things I'd like to point out. What I'm going to demonstrate works best for small groups, like a family or a small office. Since every group or business is different, please contact an Apple support specialist in your area for an evaluation of your needs. If you've been with me for the last two videos, you remember Pam. In her spare time, she's a soccer mom who handles the webpage for her children's soccer team. The webpage was created to provide information on practices and matches. Unfortunately, Coach is a little bit on the busy side and has a tendency to be erratic. Practices change at a moment's notice, and so on and so forth. So it's very difficult for Pam to keep the website up to date. Pam needs a way to let the coach make changes to the schedule without having to play phone tag. Pam creates a Google Calendar called Soccer Calendar. She can now move information in and out of Google's calendar. She then invites Coach to use the calendar. Now both of them can change and update the soccer calendar. Pam then goes into her WordPress site and downloads a plugin that will automatically check the soccer calendar every 10 minutes and display any changes on the website. The result here is that as Coach and Pam make changes to the soccer calendar, the website changes to reflect those changes. Let's take a look at how to create a calendar like this for a WordPress site and how to do it even if you're not using WordPress. Before we begin, I'd like to remind you that this demo assumes that you already have a Google Calendar account set up and that you have your iPad and Mac calendar application connected to that Google account. If you do not, and you need some help setting that up, go take a look at the previous video, Connected Calendars Part 2. I will show you exactly how to set this up so that you'll be ready to go for this particular demonstration. For those of you who are already set up or have watched parts 1 and 2, you'll remember that this is what we've been using as Pam's desktop. And this calendar here will also look very familiar. There's our PMG Pam at iCloud. Same exact calendars we've used before, only this time we've changed one of the calendars to be called Soccer Schedule. When we click on this little widget right here, we will get a screen which will tell us a bunch of different things, and one of those is the calendar settings. And we click on calendar, share this calendar. You see that we have made a change from what we normally do. In the previous videos, we have never set this to public because it wouldn't be appropriate, for example, to have Google search through and publicize all of the appointments and stuff like that Bob would have done or anything like this. However, this is a soccer schedule, and that by definition is public. So making the calendar public and searchable to Google makes sense in this particular case. So what we're going to do now is we're going to move over to WordPress. And this is a WordPress site called Barsas Enterprises. It is my generic little demo area so that I can show you exactly how to connect this stuff to WordPress. And as you can see, there's pretty much nothing here. But what I did do before this demo is I went out and I found a Google Calendar plugin. And all I did was go up there to top, hit add new, search for Google, and a bunch of these things came up. This particular plugin is not necessarily the best. I'm not endorsing it. It happened to be, I believe, the first on the list with, I think, a 4-star rating. So I grabbed it, and I'm using it for demo purposes. It's no big deal. Pick whatever one you like. But what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to set it up. And the easiest way to set it up is just to go down to Settings and then click on the Google Calendar events. Now, this particular plugin has a lot of settings. I'm going to show you basically how to handle this and avoid a lot of the extra garbage. So the first thing we got to do is we got to add a feed. And we'll do that by tapping this button right here. And as you can see, you're given an ID for this feed. That way you can have multiple Google Calendars displayed on this website without getting anything backwards or interrupted or whatever. They have an individual ID tag. And of course, it's easier to remember things by a name, so instead of the feed ID. So we're going to put in a name here, Soccer Schedule. Now, this feed URL field down here is where things get a tiny bit tricky, but not exactly hard. Basically, what you have to do is you have to go back into your Google Calendar. You have to click on your calendar details, and you're going to come on down here to the calendar address section. You'll click on the XML, and there will be a URL feed, and you grab that URL feed, copy it, and then we'll need to close this up. We can just hit OK to get rid of it. We click back into here and then paste that URL feed back into this feed URL box. And that's exactly how this particular plugin is going to go out and grab the information that we need to have displayed. And as you can see, there's a lot of more things here. You can even set up things like, for example, this plugin only checks at a certain time, or and will only check for certain dates, and will only display dates within a specific range. Like maybe, for example, the soccer season's only 2 months long, and the rest of the time you don't want it to bother checking anything. You can set it up that way. You can also set up down here maximum number of events to retrieve. Obviously, if you have a very busy calendar, you don't want to retrieve 5,000 things to be displayed. You may only want to pull off a few. Date and time format, I wouldn't touch. Pretty much everything else you can leave as default. Cache duration, however, is important. The cache duration is the amount of time that the plugin waits before checking to see if there's anything new on the calendars. In this case, I believe that's about 12 hours. So right now, this plugin will check to see if there's any changes every 12 hours. You probably want to make that a much smaller number if you have a calendar that's going to change a lot. If the calendar is pretty much set in stone, leave it at 12 hours. Everything else that's here is pretty much default. We'll let it go. Come all the way down to the bottom. We'll hit the add feed button. And there's our feed. This is how we're going to get the magic to happen. Now, of course, it does no good to have a feed if we can't display it somewhere. And we're going to take a look here in just a second. Let me thumb through. Yeah, there's nothing here that we need to worry about. We're going to display this on the front page of our website here. So there's our home page. As you can see, we got 3 sections here: home middle 1, home middle 2, and then home middle 3 on the edge. Those correspond to areas inside the template that have been created to house widgets. And in this case, we're going to go over there and add this calendar feed to those areas. Now, of course, your template may be different. You may have a completely different setup. This is just to give you an idea of how it works. Your mileage may vary. All right, so here's area number 3, and we're going to get rid of the garbage that was in there. Let's come back. There we go. All right, so now what we've got to do is we've got to find the Google Calendar events widget. And we have a whole listing of widgets of things that we can shove into these areas. And we're going back and forth. I'm seeing a bunch of different things here, but I am somehow missing the Google, where'd it go? Yeah, there we go. Okay, so now we grab the Google Calendar event, we drag it into the area, and we are given a few things that we need to fill out. For example, we need to give it a title. So this particular area is going to be called Soccer Schedule. Kind of obvious. And then we're going to go scroll on down, and we're going to go Calendar Grid with Ajax. The Ajax will add a few dynamic elements and make it a little neater looking. Maximum number of events. In this case, we want to grab all of them, but we're limiting it back in the back to, I think it was 25, if I remember correctly. And we're checking everything over. Okay. One more thing we got to do. We got to actually put in here what feed we want displayed. Of course, we only have one feed, so we put in feed number 1. We smack the save button, and now when we come up into our WordPress site and do a refresh, boom, there it is. Soccer schedule. You did nothing. No code. There it is. Beautiful. Ready to go. Now, of course, obviously, there's nothing actually in Soccer Schedule, which is, of course, why we're in this kind of gray mode here. If we come back into Google and we come back over here, we could go ahead and add an event to this calendar. Geez, I'm having trouble. There we go. And let's just say we'll add practices in the practice schedule. And we're going to go from 4 to 5 p.m. And we're going to set that up. It's going to be repeated. And we're going to say it's on Monday and Wednesday, or just Wednesday, let's say. For example, we'll say that we're going to have it end in a couple of months here. Oh, what about July 15th, just for giggles? And we'll hit the save button. And we post it up, and we've got our event, but we've got a problem here because I set that event up incorrectly, didn't I? Let's see here. Today through... I set the end date wrong. All right, with the end date, we want to reset this for all events. Now, when it updates, there it is, soccer practice. Now, remember that all of this is still set up with our iCal, so we could do this with our calendar app on our Mac just as easily. In fact, if we pull that back up, let it do the refresh. And we're going to have to force it to refresh because remember, this is on a 1-minute delay. There's our practice right there. And of course, the same thing would be happening on any iPad that was set up at the same time. So we take a look, we do a refresh. Oh, surprise. Soccer Schedule hasn't updated. Why? Very simple, because the plugin is only going to look once every 12 hours. So what we're going to do is, for the sake of this demo, we're going to go ahead and just do a manual refresh real fast so that you can see it. And of course, once again, if this was a full production site, you would have to set a time for this refresh that made sense. Probably every, 5-10 minutes or so would be reasonable. And so we refresh the front page, and now there we go. We have our practices being displayed. Once again, we didn't have to do anything. Once it's been set up, it will just automatically take care of itself and update without us doing any actual real work. Now, this is not the only thing we can do with this. We can also come back in here and we can set this up to look like a list instead of a calendar. And I'm going to show you how that looks by doing it into that Home Middle 2 area. So once again, we're just going to grab the widget, drag it into Home Middle 2. And in this case, we're going to call this Soccer Agenda. But I need to learn how to spell. Let's try that again. There we go. And the same basic thing. Feed is number 1. We're going to change this from calendar to list. And we're going to leave pretty much everything else the same. And when we come back out to our front page and do a refresh, we now have a list of all of the practices. Now, obviously, this doesn't look very good because we've grabbed all of the practices for all time, and it now is stretched way beyond what is reasonable. So we're going to go back in, and we're going to reset this maximum number of events to be maybe 3 actually. We'll hit the save. We'll come back out. We'll smack refresh. And there we go. That's a little bit better. Much more reasonable sort of a list. And of course, the things that are inside this list are customizable. You can put other information there, make it smaller, change color, whatever you need to do to make you happy. Now, this is not the only way to do this. For example, let's say you don't have a WordPress site, and you don't have access to plugins and widgets and all the other good stuff like this too. You can put in an HTML version of this calendar. In the way you do that is you come back into your Google Calendars, you click on the calendar settings, and you come down into this section right here where it says embed this calendar. Now, we're going to make some adjustments to this. So we're going to say customize the color and background and so on and so forth. All right, now once we've popped that link, we get to see this generic calendar that Google has created for us. Now, we're going to turn some things off because we already know that this is way too big for our area. So we're going to turn off title. We're going to turn off the time zone. We're going to turn off the calendar list. We're going to go and turn off the print icon. And I think we're going to leave the rest as is. We're also going to switch this to an agenda mode, so it gives us the list. And as you can see, the width and height are way too big for the area that we're going to be in. So we're going to make a guess here. And we're going to punch in a width that we think is about right. Maybe 300 by maybe, let's say, 200 or so. We're going to scroll down, double check everything else, and make sure that it is set to the soccer calendar. That's important, obviously, because you don't want to be displaying some other calendar on your soccer webpage. And as we look at this, that looks a little small to me. Let's bump that up a bit. Yeah, that's looking better. All right. So we go up here, we smack update HTML to make sure everything has been placed on there. We look at it again and go, yeah, well, you know, the navigation panes are pretty much gone and the tabs are gone. So we might as well just get rid of the tabs. Yeah, that looks better. We come here and we say update HTML. Now you can see that this is how the calendar is going to look. And this block of HTML that's right there, already pre-written for you, only has to be copied and then pasted into your site. Now, in a WordPress situation, we can do this very fast and easy through a widget. That widget is going to be called text. So we're going to punch that widget into the home middle one area. So there we go. That is arbitrary text or HTML. So we try and scooch this up. Come on, scooch, scooch, scooch. And we plop it into our home middle one. Now, once again, we have a title, so we're going to slap a title in here. And we're going to call this one a Google List. And then we're just going to paste that whole block of HTML that Google already made for us right in this area. In our case, we have this automatically add thing. Don't touch it. Just go ahead and save. Once it's done saving, we can come back out to our homepage. And then we'll do a quick refresh. And when we scroll down, we see that now we have a Google list. And hey, look, it was pretty darn close. We're probably within maybe only 10, maybe 20 pixels of being a perfect size. Not too shabby. Now, of course, you can see the difference here. The widgetized stuff looks nicer. It also doesn't have the Google Calendars advertisement at the bottom. It's a little more professional in my opinion. However, the nice thing about the Google List is you can dump it anywhere you need to dump it, and it updates automatically based upon what happens at the Google Calendar, instead of having the cache delay that we're looking at with the widgets over here. So we can also take this, if we want to, and go back into Google Calendar and back into our area where we're modifying. And we can actually make this a slightly different. We can take it into month mode. And then we get our calendar like this. And then, of course, we're just going to adjust it a little tiny bit here. Make sure that everything is correct still. Update that HTML. And then we're going to select the entire block of text. We're going to copy it out. We're going to come back into the same widget we were in before. And we're going to select this and then paste right over the top. Hit the save button. And once it's been saved, we'll bounce back out to the home page. Click on our refresh. And now, ta-da, we have a calendar based off of Google. Now, all this is fine and dandy, but we still have one more person that we got to take into account, and that's the coach. Now, Coach accesses his calendar through his iPad, and we have set up his iPad so that he has access to this calendar as well. So let's go and take a look at how Coach would add a game and or make changes to this calendar on this website. So here we are, we're on Coach's iPad. And as you can see, the practice is already there for us because that was put in by Pam. And since we're all on the same calendar, it updates straight to this iPad. So Coach is going to put in a soccer game, and he decides that it's going to be on Saturday. And let's say it's at 9 o'clock, and that it ends at 2 o'clock. Pretty simple. He smacks the done button, takes a look at everything here, checks it over, and then especially checks that calendar. It must say soccer schedule or it's not going to update. That is crucial that you have the correct calendar there. And of course, he can add notes and or locations or whatever else he needs to do. And there is the game. This has now been pushed up to Google. And when we go back to the desktop, we're going to see how this has updated our calendars. Once again, back at the desktop, we see that not much has really changed on the website. And that, of course, is because we haven't actually done a refresh. But if we come into the calendar app, the soccer game is now being displayed because, of course, it was placed into that soccer calendar. And if we come over here and refresh the website, we will see that the Google Calendar immediately picked up the change. However, our widgets have not. This is once again based upon that whole 12-hour cache delay. So once again, make that cache delay a short period if you expect there to be lots of changes. In this case, what we're going to do is we're going to just go back in. We're going to manually refresh this again. Pop the refresh button. We're then going to come back out to the home page. Hit the refresh on the home page. And now we have our soccer game. And as you can see, it has moved down the practices and added something new to our schedule. And that's basically all there is to it. It's a very simple, very easy way to handle this problem and keep people that are in groups or have clubs, whatever, appraised of changes in scheduling with literally no coding and extremely simple setup. So I hope you found this to be useful and that you'll come back and watch some more with me. I would like to say thank you very much and have a wonderful day.